I just said no.
Yeah, that's right.
Call to order a work session, Goodyear City Council, Monday, February 23rd. All items listed are for discussion only. No action can and will be taken. No council members are in attendance. We have one item on our agenda for this work session. Briefing on economic development ordinance, emphasis, I guess, on foreign trade zone, and Harry Paxton will lead the discussion.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Tonight we want to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the issues that are impacting economic development before we get into the economic development ordinance, which we've had an ordinance for many years, and that ordinance expired in December, at the end of December last year, and so we're updating that ordinance now. And we've have several things we want to update in the ordinance, including the definition of focus areas and priority projects, so a little more defined there. Notification to governing bodies when we do provide some incentives that impact other governing bodies. Requirements and criteria. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah. I think maybe it's that one. Oh, it worked earlier.
there it is.
There it is. Okay, it's a little slow. Also, a couple of new programs that we're proposing, the Shopping Center Vitality Program and the Foreign Trade Zone. And so we'll spend our time talking about those. The Economic Development Ordinance in the past has provided guidelines for applying those incentives for the city manager. Arizona, as you know, talking a little bit about economic development, some of the issues that are impacting us. Arizona, as you know, has had very limited economic development incentive programs. Some of the grassroots programs, such as job training funds, in fact, which has been a very important fund for us in helping us attract Macy's and Amazon, as you probably know from the recent budget decisions, those funds have been swept. So on the immediate impact, those state programs are being swept. On the other end, those that are more long-term, say, for example, the Science Foundation of Arizona, those funds have also been swept. And they provide research and economic development initiatives that help over time and on the long term. So anything from short-term immediate impact to long-term impact are things that are being impacted in terms of economic development programs. You remember a few years ago, House Bill 2515 limited the city's ability to do retail sales tax reimbursements. And then, of course, there's also been proposed legislation limiting GIPLET or eliminating GIPLET, or legislation. One of the proposals actually has a proposal that would impact existing agreements that are in place now.
They decided they just don't want us to have businesses? Is that the new look now?
I think what's happened is we're being compounded. Very good question, Councilmember Osborne. Councilmember Lord,
Okay,
excuse me.
I'll
blame it on her. It's a very good question. I think what's happening is we're having the budget impact us significantly. That's causing, obviously, some of these programs have been mainstay for economic development for some time, being swept. And then, of course, there's been a lot of issues about some of the programs and how we've used those programs in the past by groups that are not supportive of legislation. So both those things coming together at the same time definitely have an impact on economic development. Also, a recent ruling by the Superior Court regarding the City North case with the City of Phoenix and the gift clause in the Constitution could also significantly impact us and maybe even take away many of these programs that are existing now.
Well, that's still up in the air, isn't it?
It is still up in the air. In fact, my understanding is the City of Phoenix has, Ward's probably more up to date on this, but the City of Phoenix has applied to the appeal to the Supreme Court on that ruling. Turning to our city and some of the current market conditions, other things that are impacting us. And there's some bad news stories here, which are not surprising to everyone. Excuse me. Is that going to go? Whoops. Did that go backwards? There we go. Looking at the current market conditions and our vacancy compared to Maricopa County for this, actually through the last quarter, and then also current data as we can get it through CoStar. We use a CoStar analysis in this information that we subscribe to because we can get a better baseline of exactly what's happening in Goodyear. If you look at our industrial's vacancy is pretty high, almost approaching 40%. Last year was a very good year for Goodyear in many ways. We brought a lot of space online, and we filled a significant amount of space. In fact, we filled over 1.2 million square feet, primarily with Macy's and also with Amazon, most of that space. But also we have a significant amount of space that isn't being used at this time, which isn't uncommon. In fact, if you look at Phoenix Valley for this last year, 2008, it was a record year, surprisingly, probably to many people. It was a record year for industrial space. Over 13 million square feet was added to, over 11.4 million square feet was added to the Phoenix market in industrial space, which compounds the vacancy more. But if you look at our vacancy, it's significantly higher than the county average. If you also look at retail, we're significantly higher, where we're approaching 25% vacancy in the retail.
The industrial, how much of that is spec?
A significant amount of that is spec. In fact, if you look at some of the large projects, obviously over where Amazon's at, Amazon's filled spec space. There's another 191,000 square foot building just adjacent to them. Got another 418,000 square foot building over there with the Loth project down at Lower Buckeye and Litchfield Road.
I'm sorry. These are properties that are available, not occupied.
These are properties that are first-generation space that have not been filled. And, of course, we also have the Suncor building. That's a large first-generation space. Hasn't been filled yet either.
Which one is that?
That's the building at Indian School and Cotton along the 303.
Oh, yeah. Those are all Clearys up there then, too? Or is there someone in part of those?
No, those are clear at this point. Yeah, they have not been filled, or even a portion of them. The last information I
But in
had.
a sense, this is good because we've got a company that's looking for space immediately. It's there.
Exactly. That was one of the things I wanted to point out, and there's a very good side to this as well. For many years, the community didn't have extra space, didn't have available buildings. You're in a much better position when you come out of a bad economy if you've got available space. And so we're very fortunate to have a significant amount of available space, and it's nice space in nice developments. So in that sense, we feel fortunate because we are prepared for when we do come out of the difficult times. And then even today, we have opportunities and ones that are interested in looking at those spaces. So although the activity is much less than what it was in the past, we still have opportunities today.
I'm sorry to have interrupted you, but
Oh, no problem.
okay, thank you.
No problem. Office, we're pretty much tracking with what the county average is for office, and we have a limited amount of space of office. The good news, though, is that we added a lot of jobs. We added a significant amount of jobs in a time where, many cities were not adding jobs. So with Macy's and Amazon, with Cancer Treatment Centers of America, we were fortunate to add those jobs this last year. Taking you through a little bit of the history of the Economic Development Ordinance, which we adopted back in 1997, the original, and then amended several times through the years. And then the last one was amended in 2005, which expired, as I mentioned earlier, in December of this last year. Because of the establishment of the policies that the cities had, it's definitely known as a community that's pro-business, and many of those policies obviously have produced great results for the city of Goodyear. Cancer Treatment Centers of America, of course, is one of the latest ones that opened up, which is a terrific example. Macy's and Amazon this last year as well. And, of course, it's not coming fast enough for any of us, but the mall as well will make Goodyear a regional destination for retail when the mall does open. And then quietly, Lockheed Martin, because of the city's commitment to business, Lockheed's found to be a great place to do business. Over the last 6 years ago, they were 500 employees. They're well over 800 now, which they've quietly creeped up to well over 800. And if you consider their contract employment, they're probably closer to 900. So they're a significant employer, in fact, our largest employer.
No, that increase is not within their current structuring. That's something new that we're providing them?
That is where they're at right now. Exactly what they have on Litchfield Road with all the operations they had there on Litchfield.
But are they adding to that, or are they going to?
There's, potential, obviously, like any business, but they haven't announced anything yet at this point. If If you look at the available incentive programs that we have and that we've used in the ordinance before, go to the next slide here. I'm just not pushing that hard enough. The available incentive programs that have been listed in the economic development ordinance in the past, such as things as the rebate of development and related fees, the rebate of sales tax and construction sales tax revenues, and then property tax abatement and reductions or payment in lieu of taxes, that hasn't necessarily been listed in the ordinance in the past, which is one of the things that we're updating the ordinance with, as well as those things pertaining to property tax, such as the government property lease excise tax program. Remember, the GIPLA program provides a way for business to receive property tax abatement if they're in a redevelopment area of up to 8 years, and then also through a period of time a lease excise tax, which lowers their property tax, and that's on the real property tax, the land and the building, not the personal property tax. Then the enterprise and military reuse zones in the foreign trade zone are also, that we're proposing, are also programs that have an impact on property tax. Also, in the past, the city's used the community or community facilities districts, not necessarily for economic development, but have used the improvement district program for economic development. And so we will propose that as well as being included in the ordinance. The improvement district program is one that we've used for the mall area, which has worked out very well in getting the infrastructure there. It's also, just to update you, we've also worked with owners in the airport gateway area, stretching down from Van Buren down to the airport area. I've brought those owners together several times in talking about an improvement district in that area to provide the backbone infrastructure. The engineering department's been very helpful in providing those estimates. In fact, the last meeting we had with them in December, we provided them detailed estimates as to what those costs would be. They have not decided to go forward with an improvement district at this time, largely because of the economy, but there is interest. We'll meet again with them in probably the June, July timeframe and discuss again that opportunity. That's one of the things that's going to be very important for us as we go forward, is to provide that backbone infrastructure, basically from right here where we're standing south to the airport area. And so as opportunities begin to turn around, and we'll be working closely with those property owners to encourage an improvement district in that area. Also, used in the past has been the cost recovery ordinance. You see that many times probably with many projects that Harvey's brought forward, and also expedited plan reviews and inspections will also be listed in the economic development ordinance.
Is that the form? Is that the form will come on Harvey, the process of doing the form permitting or form?
In terms of, I'm not sure I understand the question. In terms of
the basis
expedited
called
review?
Form-based zoning. Is that part of that, or is that coming later? No, that's not.
That'll be coming back separately.
Separately. All right, thank you.
Yeah, primarily that's going to be dealing with the plan reviews,
Yeah.
and construction plan reviews and permit reviews. It could also, at times, maybe through Harvey's process and through the community development's process, maybe work through expedited planning process as well, similar to what we did with cancer treatment centers. The proposed focus areas of the industrial and office, the city's done excellent work in the past in putting together Focus Futures 2 and Focus Futures 1, a very detailed general plan, and many other planning documents that are listed in the economic development ordinance. We will also update it with the Phoenix Goodyear master plan for the airport. So those plans have given us plenty of guidance in the past, but we also wanted to define a little bit more some of those focus areas for business attraction. Aerospace and aviation, which is, of course, one of our strengths. An emerging area would be, of course, in health services, biotechnology, of course, with Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and as West Valley Hospital continues to grow as well. Advanced business services, high-tech electronics, and software development, and other office sectors, and environmental technology and sustainability, which is one of the few industries projected to grow over this next year. In fact, they're projected to grow significantly, I think in the 20s, over 20% over this next year, which is actually a reduction from what it was planned to grow in excess of 30% So there's still plenty to grow. And that's one of the industries, of course, we're targeting as a community, and the Valley, of course, is targeting, the state is targeting. If you look at that industry and what it's projected to do, expect over the next 10-year period that over $232 billion will be invested in different projects throughout the U.S., creating probably somewhere between the neighborhood of 276,000 jobs to over 400,000 jobs, are the different estimates that I've seen. In Arizona, we're fortunate that we have several companies right now looking at Arizona and the Phoenix Valley. In fact, there's 11 projects that GPEC has listed that could potentially create over 5,000 jobs and over $5.2 billion in investment, which is significant. Arizona's positioned in some ways to really take advantage of that with our workforce, with our high-skilled semiconductor workforce. And so that's one of the advantages that we have. Also, our proximity to California makes it a real advantage for us, because that will be one of the largest, if not the largest market in the world in the future, and a defined market for solar and energy production.
But it takes one more.
Right.
What's it going to take
Yeah,
from the state? Why
exactly.
don't you explain what we need? And can you
Yep.
explain what that, remember we had talked about that cashback tax?
Exactly. Thank you for that question, Councilmember Lord. That is a very good question on what it was leading to. One of the things that's being proposed to the legislature, a bill that is Senate Bill 1403, for quality jobs in sustainable industry, provides industry with a tax credit for their investment. Jobs. Arizona will be fortunate. It will create a significant number of jobs over time and investment, similar to what's happened with Abengoa and that project with APS. That will come to Arizona just by nature of the fact that we have the sun here, an intense amount of sun. What that doesn't create, though, it creates a lot of investment, it takes a lot of land, but what it doesn't create a lot of jobs. The highest number of jobs are during the construction period, and then you have a small number of jobs. Arizona needs to position itself to take advantage of the manufacturing jobs, and that's what we're trying to do with this Senate bill. The bill will provide a tax credit to industry. Right now, if you look at where Arizona sits, even though we have great industry assistance through ASU, with the only photovoltaic lab in the country, certifying lab in the country at ASU, with the School of Sustainability, with a great workforce. What we don't have is we don't have those programs, those economic development programs we were talking about earlier, to provide that incentive. It's through a tax credit program where if a company invests $150 billion through a 10% tax credit program, they could receive a tax credit of up to $15 million initially. States such as Oregon and other states have these types of programs. So if a company is coming in, they're able to provide that tax credit up front. They go on the open market and they try and sell that for probably maybe 70, 80 cents on the dollar. And so a company that has an income tax liability with the state of Arizona would purchase that. And of course, the benefit that they get, they're purchasing something of, say, a $15 million tax credit. And maybe if their liability is $15 million, maybe they purchase for $13 or $14 million, and they've saved themselves a significant amount of money. The company that's a solar company that qualified for those credits, then of course has a significant infusion of cash up front. And that's how Oregon has been successful. That's how other states such as New Mexico and different programs that Texas has been very successful in capturing a lot of this investment, where we haven't been because we don't have that type of a program to provide those types of incentives up front. So that program is one that can be a significant impact and really put us in the game. Those in the incentive world have analyzed all the different programs in the different states. They feel that we would probably be in the top 5 if we're able to provide that program. So you'll see more information about that bill. In fact, Mormina will probably talk a little bit about it tonight and what it can provide.
You said that was 1400?
Yep, Senate Bill 1403. Specifically named Renewable High-Wage Industries Incentives.
Before you go any further, Harry, let me take you back to aerospace and aviation. Have we used in promoting our location the 2 flight schools that we have, Lufthansa and British?
Oh, definitely. There's some of our top employers, and one of the things that we are doing, in fact, we attended for the second time was the National Business Aviation Association trade show. And it was in Orlando this last fall. And so we attended that and worked with the FBO. And definitely that's information that we have available and is available to those that have interest in that area. We're very excited about the airport. Over time, I think it'll be a terrific magnet for us. It's also in place with some great programs, such as the military reuse program for that site itself, and sites right adjacent to it. So that can also help attract the aviation and the aerospace companies.
Harry, are we working with Sun MP that has that land adjacent to it, or the entrance to the west side, if that's ever put in?
We've had several conversations with Sun MP about a number of things with the programs that exist there, and then also there's been conversations with the city of Phoenix, and of course the airport manager at the airport about infrastructure on the west side of the airport.
I spoke to Stephen Reniker the other day, and his impression was that the city hasn't stepped forward to, now that's his statement, the city hasn't stepped forward to try to build a partnership so we can get that going. And I said, well, I'll look into it. But I didn't think that was the case, but whatever it is, I think we need to try to step forward and get some good cooperation with them to get something going. And I don't know what that's going to take.
Councilmember Cavalier, we've been meeting with them on a regular basis, trading drafts. So a little surprised by that comment, but we still work closely with them. Still work very closely with them, and it's an agreement whereby they would put the infrastructure in leading into the entrance on the west side of the airport. That agreement is not done.
Okay, thank you.
And we are working closely with City of Phoenix on that, as Harry pointed out, and the FBO. So a lot of push for that. We have daily and weekly conversations on this, working with our legal counsel as well.
Great. Thank you.
Also, we've also listed higher education institutions as our target. And of course, that's something this council and the mayor, of course, has led in not only for our community, but I think a great example for the Valley and for the West Valley. One of the things that we wanted to do also was to make sure that when we have, and this is a process I know that we've followed in the past, just necessarily hasn't been listed in the ordinance, is when we do have impacts in terms of property tax, we provide governing bodies notification of that. And so we're proposing a 60-day notification for property tax impacts to the governing bodies, and then also 30 days prior notice to council approval with a third-party benefit analysis to show them. This is very similar to the process that we followed when we provided the government property lease excise tax, or the GIPLET, for Cancer Treatment Centers of America. We contacted the schools, notified them of what we were considering, and provided them with a cost-benefit analysis.
How many people have received their property evaluation?
Got them over the weekend. Everybody's got them.
Well, my property has decreased 23%. So that's going to have a tremendous impact if similar reductions occur in the city. It's going to have a terrific impact on what we can do in the future from a standpoint of finance.
Definitely will have an impact. I know Larry's been talking about that for some time, as he suspected that would be happening and have an impact on the city.
Sad, very sad.
Yes, it is. We've also included some very specific requirements for industry, some guidelines. This tells the development community that we're looking for high-quality, high-job impact investment. Not to say we're not looking for others, but for significant incentives, we're looking for these types of benefits to the community. So the majority of new jobs would equal or exceed 125% of the state's median wage as determined by the Arizona Department of Commerce. That's about $37,000 now, or about $17.80 an hour. The median wage is about $29,000 a year now at $14.25. So we're asking even above the state's median wage for significant incentives.
Solar companies and bio companies, they fall within that. Is that correct?
Yes, many of them do.
That's why we're targeting that.
Right, exactly. And that's the majority of the jobs, so it could be as little as 51%, but hopefully many more of those would be in that high-wage category. Also, we want to ensure that they provide health insurance, which most of them do, at least at 50%, which is what's required for enterprise zone.
Of course, the feds are coming in with it. We'll pay some portion of those health insurance premiums, so in line with.
Yes, there could be an impact there to help. Definitely, those costs are rising. I did talk with Dean in Human Resources about that, and he suggested that probably 50%, given that the costs are rising and that corporations may be reducing their benefits some over this difficult time. Hopefully that won't last too long, but that's pretty much what they're projecting. So we decided to use 50%. Of course, we want to see that they do more where possible. Also, one of the new things in the ordinance that we're proposing is the shopping center vitality program. As we mentioned earlier, the vacancy in Goodyear is getting to be challenging, as it is in different places across the valley, of course. But we've been hit hard by that. We have a significant amount of retail that has come online that hasn't been filled, or we've lost some key retailers of good size that have had an impact in our community. So what's being proposed here, and we're limited in what we can provide because of House Bill 2515, but primarily what we're looking at is probably development-related fees and expedited reviews. Unless we're in a redevelopment area, then we still have the benefit of sales tax reimbursements. Primarily, we're looking at second-generation retail space, that is vacant retail space of 20,000 square feet or larger. And so some of our centers that have been impacted by some of those major anchors leaving or those sub-anchors that have left, we're looking into that as a program to consider to help encourage certain users to come to those sites. One of the things that we haven't completely developed yet, we're also looking at an opportunity where it might be fitting in some locations where different use other than retail may be allowed, where there might be an office use, it could be an educational use, maybe even in some cases a church use in some of the vacant retail space. Where it makes sense, where it doesn't conflict with existing covenants that exist among those property owners, but there may be some cases there where that exists, and we would bring that back before the council as well as we develop that more fully.
Something I'd like to add to this, and this kind of goes on the heels of the sign ordinance that we'll be reviewing shortly. Something that I've seen in the past years that we haven't really had to focus on was when tenants move out or when buildings are left empty. For an example, would be Fazoli's. The condition that the building and the signs have been left in make the center look blighted. And so that's something to a vitality program that we need to look at, because that is something we haven't dealt with in the past. And I think as policy, we need to be a little stronger in how we deal with that, because you want to bring in new tenants and we're sitting there with, you know, a vacant building that makes the whole area look blighted because of the way they've left their building. And so, you know, I know that's for another day of discussion, but this is a perfect example where that would fall.
I'll make a note of that and see what we can do, and if we can include that in the program somewhere.
Harry, what are the owners of those buildings doing to help us out? I mean, it can't just be us trying to bring people in. Are they out trying to get people as well? Because some of the shopping areas are owned by specific companies.
Oh, yes, definitely. Most of the developers, especially those that are in centers that are experiencing these high vacancies, are being aggressive.
Are they? Okay.
They're being aggressive and trying to do different things to get tenants in there. You'll see things range from a period of time to where there's a very low rent or no rent for a period of time, for free for a period of time. Yes. Obviously, it's a tenant market right now, and so tenants are putting a lot of pressure on, and they're able to get good deals, and so you see the prices coming down as well. So they're out there scrambling for those tenants that can fill a 20,000 square foot box. There's definitely work being done now on the development side to try and fill those.
And they're working with us. They know that we're trying to help them out, and so there's a lot of synergy between us.
There is. In fact, we've contacted several different developers about some of the ideas we have here where we can impact and assist.
Harry, what about the, I don't want to get into specifics, but that Bayless building has been empty for so long down there on Western and Litchfield.
Litchfield.
Are they, the feeling I get is that that family isn't even interested in filling that building. Are they doing anything to help out, especially those areas? We really need to take care of those.
Yeah, we're in contact with them, definitely from time to time, and trying to encourage them through our facade improvement program and other ways that we can assist. In that area, it's in the redevelopment area, so we have more ability to do different things. They have not been aggressive at this point in pursuing those opportunities. What happens sometimes with properties is just, it's how hungry they are. Where are they in terms of what type of financing do they have on the site, or do they own it free and clear? I don't know the exact specifics of that site. And then also part of it is, I think, seeing the opportunity. The improvements that we have happening on Western Avenue on the northeast corner and through the street improvements, I think that will improve that area and help people to see the opportunity and the vision of what can be there. But we definitely continue to work with those and encourage them through the programs that we have existing to attract tenants there. That leads me to the other program that we're proposing is a foreign trade zone program that hasn't been listed in our economic development ordinance. And in fact, if you look at the Phoenix Valley, there's really only 2 foreign trades, general purpose trade zones in the Phoenix Valley, that being in Phoenix, which has had one for some time, I think dating back to the 70s, and Mesa, which has had one dating back to the late 90s. The federal trade zone program is granted by the U.S. Foreign Trade Zone Board, so it's a federal program. It's official designation of land or property within the U.S. Where foreign and domestic merchandise is considered outside of the U.S., or at least outside the customs territory when they bring it in, so they're not charged the tariffs. So for some businesses, it can be a significant impact. So it provides those U.S. Customs special procedures that reduces the time, reduces the cost, improves cash flow for businesses. In Arizona, there's also another twist to it that provides a significant benefit, and that can be the real and personal property tax reclassification.
Excuse me, Craig. This is a little new to me, so I'm trying to understand everything, and it makes sense. I guess flat out, my one question, and I don't know how else to ask it, but we would not be giving any special property tax treatment to a foreign company over an American company, is my question.
Councilmember Osborne, that's a very good question. If they qualify through the Federal Trade Zone Board, which there is, the city has to decide if it wants to participate and provide a foreign trade zone. If a company comes in, and may be foreign-owned, and creates employment here and has operations in other countries bringing product in, the Federal Foreign Trade Zone Board makes that decision as to whether or not they qualify. So it's, in a sense, a 2-step qualification process. One is the city has to decide whether they want to do it. Once the city provides a foreign trade zone area, then it's really left up to the Foreign Trade Zone Board to approve a company. So it could be a foreign trade. It could be a foreign company.
And that doesn't bother me. That's not the point of my question. It's really, I was concerned by the way that this sounded, was that a foreign business would be getting a better property tax rate or incentive because they're a foreign business than if an equal American company came and did not receive that same benefit. That's really what, in a nutshell, is what I'm asking.
There's so many
good question.
foreign companies now looking in Phoenix.
Right.
Which is great, but I just, right down to the end of it, if you had American company X and you had foreign company Z, and they were identical companies, with the exception of some of the other things that, the tariffs and all that, but when it comes down to it, picking Goodyear site property, American company has to pay more than the foreign company, then I have a problem, and that's my question.
Yeah, if it's a company that can qualify under the program, meaning that they have significant amount of product that they're bringing in from a foreign country, and then they're shipping it back out to a foreign country, or then it's being shipped here to the U.S. once it leaves that foreign trade zone. Whether they're a U.S. company or a foreign company, that's going to be what determines whether or not they're able to be qualified, and the Foreign Trade Zone Board determines that.
It comes into the fact that there certainly is the unemployment rate. At least, yeah.
We'll talk
So
about
I
I just need to understand.
So I think what you're saying is, if you're asking if they're equal companies.
Right, if they were
they
equal
both-
companies,
Yeah,
right.
if they both have those, it's not necessarily a program for foreign trade or for foreign companies. It's a program for U.S. companies and can
Okay.
also be foreign.
Okay.
Yeah, so when we say a foreign trade zone, it's really more referring to not necessarily where the company's originating from, but it's referring to the fact that product is being brought in.
So it could be an American company that's established overseas.
Exactly.
Comes back, opens
That's-
here,
Exactly.
and
Helps
they
quite a
continue
bit.
to trade the.
Or you might be assembling a product that's 50% foreign made, and you can do that and cash flow it and not pay the taxes on it until it's assembled and out the door and off to its final destination.
Exactly, right.
Got a lot of companies in.
Right. As you were mentioning earlier, Councilmember Lord, definitely there is a significant amount of investment by German companies, by Japan. Those are the two largest in Arizona that have foreign direct investment here. And then we expect it to be growing over time. Germany is one of the countries that leads the world in solar production and solar investment. And so those opportunities we think will probably be increasing in the future. So to get us prepared is one of the reasons why we're proposing.
We have one situation here in Insumet. Insumet is owned by a German company, and we've just been notified that they went into Chapter 11. So
Yeah, they have to qualify. In many cases, it's a good point. They don't necessarily qualify if they're a foreign company, and maybe they may even bring product in. It depends on whether or not they want to go through the process and if it's beneficial for them. So it's not, for example, for every company, but for companies that it can have a significant impact, we want to make sure we're in the position to provide that in a timely manner. So looking at the different types of foreign trade zones, I can go to the next slide. Oops, how did that happen?
Isn't it getting harder and harder to tell about the foreign companies and who owns who? And, I mean, you almost have to thread back to the top of the company to find out whether it's a foreign-owned company or not, unless they apply for this program. But, I mean, generally speaking.
Yeah, you're right, Councilmember Holland. That's a significant amount of work. That's I'm sure part of the work that the Foreign Trade Zone Board goes through, is determining the origin of the company and
Right.
the ownership.
The sense we're mixing up the word foreign owned with foreign trade zone
Right.
in our discussion here. And I think it's important to delineate, it does not have to be a foreign company in this foreign trade. We all
Right,
understand
right.
that.
No, I think we
Yeah, let
understand.
me go through
And
a
that
couple.
Each company is treated equally. A company might be foreign and B company might be U.S., but they're treated as applicants fairly at the board, the federal level.
Well, that's why I needed that.
And we're not encouraging one over the other necessarily.
No, we're not.
Right.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Let me go through a couple examples. I think it'll be clear. A general purpose zone is, say, for example, in our area, of course, we don't have very many ports of entry, but industrial parks would be a foreign trade zone, a general purpose zone, where you take acreage of a property and you designate that for a foreign trade zone. In many cases, it's raw property. It doesn't have development yet, but it's property that's designated for a foreign trade zone. It actually becomes activated when a company locates there and is approved by the Foreign Trade Zone Board. Subzones, which are throughout the Phoenix Valley, sponsored primarily by the city of Phoenix, is for a specific purpose, for a company that comes to an area where they decide on a piece of property that isn't in the foreign trade zone that was established by a city. And so they take a spot, so to speak, and certify a building or a location for a specific use. And so that's been done many times in the Phoenix Valley. I mentioned earlier that there are 2 foreign trade zones, general purpose zones, one in Phoenix, one in Mesa. And the city of Phoenix has provided several areas, for example, for Chandler, Microchip, and Intel are foreign trade zone sites. Throughout the state of Arizona, there are many throughout the state, from Tucson to Nogales, and of course I mentioned those here in Mesa. For Foreign Trade Zone number 75, it's Phoenix's zone. They have ST Microelectronics, Sumco Southwest, and PetSmart. You can see there's a mix there. You have a mix of some distribution and some high-tech companies, primarily based on the fact whether or not they're bringing product in from a foreign country and they can take advantage of those zones. Some Phoenix subzones in other cities, I mentioned Intel, Microchip also in Tempe, Conair in Glendale, Abbott Laboratories in Casa Grande. So they're fairly well established, but there's not any in the West Valley other than a subzone that's provided by Phoenix to Glendale.
Let me ask you a question. Okay. We're talking about foreign trade zones, okay, and we got Intel coming up, which is an American company, right? Then
Yes,
you've got
Intel is
Abbott
American.
Laboratories that are located in North Chicago, Illinois. That's a based company in the United States. How do they qualify, or how are these cities qualifying these two areas for foreign trade zones?
Yeah, what happens, Councilmember Sousa, is those companies bring in a significant amount of product from overseas, or they bring product into the U.S. and then they're shipping product overseas. And so they qualify then under those regulations for bringing product in. Once again, it's based on product being brought into the U.S. or product being shipped out, or both, as to how they would qualify.
Well, in the case of Abbott Laboratories, manufacturing a drug, their drugs are probably manufactured either in Europe or in Asia, and they're importing those drugs here, so that qualifies them to be...
Yeah, to some degree, yeah, they're bringing product in or shipping product out, and so it helps them to reduce their costs by using the specialized processes that are set up through a foreign trade zone.
It's like a duty-free shop in the
Exactly.
corporate world.
That's a good way.
It's the best way to think about it. A foreign trade zone's like a duty-free shop.
Okay.
Yeah. So a company that doesn't have it, that brings in product
Vic.
from another country, is going to increase their costs significantly unless they have a foreign trade zone. There has to be a certain level, of course, that they need to bring product in for them to take advantage of it. But at some point, it significantly reduces their cost to have a foreign trade zone.
It's way off the thing, but the building of automobiles, when GM contracts with, so a widget is built in Japan and is sent then to the States to make the car work, so now they are a foreign trade zone. They can make that factory a foreign trade zone.
I imagine in many cases, yeah, the auto
Curious,
companies have
yeah.
probably located
So all of the
some,
companies that are, okay.
in many cases, yes. In some cases, they don't. It all depends on where they have operations and what they're bringing in and the value of that zone. For a company to,
Most of my jams
Some
are
days
in
more.
America, so maybe my store qualifies for
They changed it.
Yeah, you're
oops. Touchy. We've talked a little bit about some of the benefits to industry already, but one of the things it does is it improves the supply chain velocity, meaning that a product moving through a number of different hands, it shortens that process in which, especially providing the specialized customs treatment, it shortens that process. The American Manufacturers Association estimates that every day you cut off of that, you cut down your cost by 0.08%. So in 2 days, you could save yourself 1.5%. And for many companies with large number of product that they're bringing in and with low profit margins, maybe many of 10% or less, over time, that can have a significant impact, and that's where it really begins to add value to those companies. Now, in Arizona, there's also another added benefit, and it also helps us to attract industry. And, of course, we're looking primarily at the high-value industry, but it reduces the property tax significantly. In fact, it takes it right now currently down, it reduces it from a 22% assessed ratio down to a 5% ratio, or a 77% significant reduction. Yes, it is. The state of Arizona is fortunate to have companies like Microchip and Intel, and they're located in Arizona largely because we provide that property tax benefit. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't have them because of the capital-intensive nature of their business. Property taxes are very high. So we're talking with a group that has talked with several West Valley cities, that has identified that there is a foreign trade zone in the city of Phoenix, and of course, there's one in Mesa. The process for getting a foreign trade zone and going through that process is significant in terms of time. The benefit to Goodyear is it helps us position us to be in place to attract industry. We could ask for the city of Phoenix, and they've been very helpful for many cities to provide a foreign trade zone, but that's probably a 12 to 14-month process even to get a subzone. So what we want to do is to make sure that we're prepared, is that we have a foreign trade zone in place, so when industry comes to our community as a potential, we have that already done in terms of having a foreign trade zone in place, some sites that we can be competitive with other valley cities on time. We don't want to be in a position to where we can get one from another city or go through that process ourselves, but that's a 12 or 14-month process when they make that decision soon, and they want to ensure that they have that.
Harry, before you would apply for that from another city, would you already have to have a business in mind that you wanted to do, or could we apply for a subzone and hold it until somebody comes along that's...
For a subzone, that's what you have to have a user in mind. It's done for a specific
So that's
company.
why it's so complicated.
Right.
then.
So that's why we're proposing a general purpose zone. In fact, we've been working with a group out of Texas that has been contacting several of the Phoenix Valley communities here in the West Valley. In fact, they've contacted Surprise. They've contacted, of course, us, Avondale, Buckeye, Tolleson, and Peoria. And 4 of those cities, Peoria, Goodyear, Avondale, and also Surprise, have provided a letter of interest in creating what's called a joint regional foreign trade zone. So they would be the grantee, a nonprofit organization that would run the foreign trade zone. There would not be cost to us up front, because to create a foreign trade zone, it's in excess of 6 figures. So we're probably talking $125,000 to $150,000 to create a foreign trade zone, just an upfront cost. And that's working with a consultant that takes your application through the Foreign Trade Zone Board. Then, of course, you have ongoing costs as well. We've had a couple of owners that have contacted us that have initiated conversation, along with IMS Worldwide, who would be the grantee that's creating the Joint Regional Foreign Trade Zone, that have asked us for the potential of considering a foreign trade zone. Those costs would be borne by them and not by the city of Goodyear. So the other valley cities in the West Valley are also considering that type of arrangement.
What's the benefits of a nonprofit?
Well, the nonprofit organization is set up to represent each of the cities, but they are the consultant, IMS Worldwide, will be providing the services to each of the different landowners who is paying their fee. So they're the ones that are actually receiving the fee. So that is a for-profit company. But they're setting up the nonprofit grantee, which would represent each of the cities. We would also have a representative on that advisory board. So the group that's setting up the nonprofit organization would be a joint regional group representing the cities. But then, of course, they're providing the consulting services, and that's how they're benefiting and why they've taken the time and the interest to do this.
And what would that yearly cost to the city?
There is not a yearly cost to the city. Yeah, so the yearly cost would be borne by the property owners and by the organization that's been set up by IMS Worldwide. So there would not be an ongoing cost by the city.
Otherwise, we would be bearing those costs locally?
Right. Otherwise, we would bring the ongoing costs are going to be generally costs of staff time, of preparing the annual reporting that has to be done. We'll have some input into that, of course, because we'll be one of the city's representatives, is what we're proposing, but we would not incur those costs or all the time it takes to put that together.
Harry, why is that better than a subzone? I'm just going with a subzone with Phoenix. Do they get something out of it, or is there something that...
Phoenix does have an application fee, right, but even if you went through the city of Phoenix for a subzone, they'll give you a list of consultants that you need to work with that represents you through the foreign trade zone and represents the property owners to get that application done. That's where those significant fees come in, 12 to 14 months to get it done.
We're dealing with other cities, would that involve arranging intergovernmental relations?
Right. The other cities would also, if they decided to participate in a joint regional foreign trade zone, it would involve putting together documentation as to how each of the different cities would work together. And so some of that work has already begun in terms of setting up a joint regional foreign trade zone. Each of the cities that come on will of course have input as to how that form and how each of the cities work together. Each of the cities will have the opportunity to also create our own tax policy. And that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about was we created our own tax policy on those property taxes. So there's some different ideas out there that have been discussed. For example, I'll give you how Phoenix does it. Phoenix provides the property tax benefits to a company that meets the qualifications, of course, regardless if they're high industry, high impact industry, and high wage industry or not. So they could be a warehouse, for example. You have PetSmart listed as one of them. Or they could be, say, for example, like Sumco, Southwest, or Microchip, that are very high intense, high capital industries and also high wage industries. One of the things that we're proposing and considering is for assembly and manufacturing jobs would get those benefits, and maybe some other type of a tiered program for those that do not provide as much. But part of that depends on, as we go through and develop the tax policy, what each of the other cities are going to be doing and how are we competing with them. It's a preference, obviously, if you're going to provide those benefits, to provide it to the highest impact companies that you can provide it for. And so that would be done if we set up our own tax policy through a pilot agreement. So if a company came in that didn't meet, say, our stated requirements, but they still met the Foreign Trade Zone Board requirements, then we would require a pilot agreement or a payment of taxes to provide still those property taxes of something of equal value or some amount we determine back to the different governing bodies. If you have, for example, a company that decides to take an existing building, the policy in Phoenix is that the property taxes still stay on the property tax rolls of the existing property taxes. So the property is not reclassified to 5%. Only the new investment is reclassified to the 5%. That way the school districts and the college and the city and the county still continue to get what they have on the property rolls now. And that would be also part of what we would be considering. And as we work through the different cities and determine where they're at and what their policy is going to be over the next couple of months, I imagine, then we'll come back with another more defined policy as to what that should be.
Harry, if we decided to go with this nonprofit, this collaboration of cities, would a city have veto power over us in selecting a foreign trade zone in Goodyear?
They will have input. The Foreign Trade Zone Board would make that decision whether or not, if, for example, we wanted a subzone within our own community, they would have input, but no, I don't believe they would have veto power over us. Yeah. That would be determined by the Foreign Trade Zone Board, who would, once again, it's another application process. And if our city council agreed to allow a subzone or another site within the city, then that would be done by our city.
So they're really there just to do the coordination and the communication and just keep things
Make sure we're within the
right,
guidelines
right.
To make sure we're within the guidelines
of a foreign relative, yeah.
and to provide our input for the area, which we will possibly have input on other cities as well as to what some of the different rules are that are established. The program would be set up for a 5-year period is what's being proposed. And so if we enter into this Foreign Trade Zone joint agreement, it would be set up for a 5-year period. Then we would have an opportunity to come back at any time in that 5-year period if we needed to change one of our policies. But then in terms of the group, it would probably be a 5-year period in which that would be set up, and in which the Foreign Trade Zone Board certifies sites for 5 years, and then you have to reapply again in order to get an extension if you haven't had someone certify and occupy the site. So we've looked at going on here, I know because we're taking up a lot of time. We've looked at 3 sites, actually, and we have 2 listed here. We were contacted independent of us doing this by one property owner who has decided not to participate. But these 2 remaining property owners at Goodyear Gateway South, which is EJM property, who is a developer there south of Van Buren, north of Yuma, west of railroad tracks, and east of the Veneta Business Park. And then also the Citation Business Park, which is north of MC 85 on the east and west side of Litchfield Road down by the airport. So let's look at those sites. So this is the EJM site, just south and east of where we're at right here, 230-acre site. What would be proposed there is about a third of the site, and so you have basically floating acreage, so to speak, where within that 230 acres, you'd have approximately 75 to 80 acres. A business could come in and decide what is the best location for them, and say if they take 20 acres, then 20 acres of that foreign trade zone is used at that location. That's about 75 to 80 acres. To give you a kind of a sense as to scale, if you look at the Macy's building, the Macy's building's on about, I think it was 32 acres or so. So that gives you a sense as to, maybe you could do 2 or 3 of those if it was that large of a building on that 75 to 80 acres. So that's what's being proposed at that location. Once again, the property owner would bear that cost of that initial cost for application.
Eric, just sitting here trying to absorb all this, I'd like to see you set up a program showing pros and cons of this approach.
Councilmember Souza, we can definitely do that.
I think that would be wise for us.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Shut up. He's giving us a good concept of what I'd like him to do is to get us the pros and cons of the program.
Sure, I'd be happy to provide that.
I had one question, just the location of the 2 parcels that you have up, actually. Being by the airport, I'm assuming that would be a good place for them. They would want to be located by the airport. Would the airport have a say with everything that we have with Homeland Security and everything else that's going on? Would they have any input as to what foreign businesses are located in the proximity of an airport? Doesn't matter, does there, I'm just asking.
Hamas can't come in.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. So
Well, the only thing I could see with impact on it is a danger to aviation. There were some industry would come in there and want to put up higher story building.
Councilmember Osborne is a very good question. Definitely there would be communication with the Phoenix Goodyear Airport on development that would happen especially at the site that is actually south of where Lockheed Martin is at now, that being adjacent right to the airport. Maybe not so much for the parcel to the east side of Litchfield Road, but definitely I think through our process they would be informed about companies coming in. If there's any type of a security issue, that's definitely going to be something high on their radar screen as well as ours. So the type of company.
I just don't know when they become part of the conversation. That's why I'm asking if that's,
It's a very good
Just
question.
questions.
When we become
I
part of
just
that
don't-
conversation.
Yeah, when do
Yeah.
we become part of that conversation? I just don't know these so.
I would imagine they would become part of the conversation definitely when a company is considering coming there. But as we go through this process, that's definitely one of the groups that we want to notify, especially if those sites are ones that are proposed for a foreign trade zone. And we would want, on the other side of that, of course, we would want to let them know so they could also begin to help us to market those benefits. These sites here, one of the benefits is you have, at least on parcel 2, is you have the military reuse zone, which gives you that 5-year benefit. But the foreign trade zone, if you had a high-quality company come here, they could have that benefit for as long as they're there. So it gives us even more power in terms of attracting industry and attracting high-quality industry to that area.
So the trade zone doesn't stay with the property once the property is turned over and vacated.
If a user, very good question, if a user leaves the property, that's who is certified and granted by the Foreign Trade Zone Board. The user leaves the property and no one else comes in that qualifies, then yeah, the property would revert back. It would not be a foreign trade zone site at that point in receiving the benefits of the property tax break.
Just a little more on that. I mean, it's going to be a geographical area that's a foreign trade zone, whether it's a full parcels or not. And if a company locates in there that does not qualify just because they're in a geographic area that would allow FTZs, they would not get the benefits, either at the federal level or the state level.
One of the last slides I have is what's the process to create it? Well, first we have to determine, are we going to have a general purpose zone or a subzone? If we decide to create a foreign trade zone, the roads that we could take would be, one, is we could decide to do it ourselves. Then, of course, we incur that cost as well as that ongoing time and effort and maintenance of the zone if we did a general purpose zone, like, say, the city of Phoenix has done or the city of Mesa has done. Or we could do a subzone off of the Phoenix site. Both of those taking probably a 12 to 14-month process to do that. Or we could participate in this joint regional foreign trade zone, which is what we're proposing, that allows us to have the site and participate with other cities, but we can develop our own policy as to what our policy is. And if the site owners have selected sites, agree to the foreign trade zone, then we go forward with the application once we've contacted the school districts and get support from the school districts. Don't expect that there will not be an immediate impact to the school districts or any taxing body because there's no one using the foreign trade zones at this time. It would have to be activated and a company would have to come in. So none of the properties would be reclassified until a company actually located there and file an application. And that process would take at least probably 12 months. This is probably a little bit outdated now. It probably would not be January of 2010 when we had the approval done, but hopefully sometime in the spring of 2010, once all the cities, if they decide to go forward, and if we decide to go forward, then that process would probably be completed sometime around the spring of 2010. I know we've talked a lot. This is quite a bit to go over, and lots of questions. Is there any other questions that I can answer at this time?
Why are we limiting this to 2 places? Does that save us money?
Each application.
Let me ask it this way.
Yeah.
Phoenix is a general purpose zone. Mesa is a general purpose zone. Does that mean throughout Phoenix they have the capability of doing a foreign trade zone?
They can do subzones,
right,
wherever someone can qualify.
Within that general purpose zone?
Well, they can basically ask for, since they've already been granted a general purpose zone, they can ask for a subzone. Still a process, they have to go back through the Foreign Trade Zone Board.
And Harry, just a little more clarification. The foreign trade zone in Phoenix is around the Sky Harbor area, so it's not the entire city of Phoenix. The one out in Mesa is around the former Williams Air Force Base, Williams Gateway. So that's where their geographical areas are. And as cities consider zone sizes, you generally want to be 100 acres or less, 80 acres perhaps, because what happens is if you don't use that over the period of the 5 years Harry was talking about, it starts to constrict. If it doesn't get used, the feds say, it's not an active zone, so let's start squishing it down a little bit. So there are things like that that come to play as well.
Well, that helps understand it then. How about Rubbermaid?
Very good question, Mayor. Rubbermaid did approach us. The owners of Rubbermaid site did approach us, which is one of the sites that we, obviously would like to have as a potential for the foreign trade zone. They did approach us. They've talked to the consultant, but this is one of the reasons why only 2 are proposing at this time. Now, through this meeting we've had here, and through if we decide to go forward, we definitely can contact other property owners and see if they have interest. But each property owner is going to incur an initial cost. That cost is probably $60,000 or in excess of $60,000. And so that's part of the barriers as to why some property owners don't want to participate. Rubbermaid brings up a good example because there would be one that if they did locate a company there that qualified, then that would be an example probably where we would recommend that the existing taxes that are there now would remain in place, and through a pilot agreement, new improvements would receive the 5% assessment ratio. It would be nice to have an existing building in addition to greenfield sites in our foreign trade zone, so that we're prepared either for a company that wants to take an existing building or one that wants to do ground-up construction. But that's largely going to be dependent upon the owner through this process.
Have we, to the mayor's point, outside of Rubbermaid, have we approached Lockheed and asked them if they wanted to participate in this in terms of potentially some of their?
We have not approached Lockheed ourselves. In fact, what we've done is responded to companies that have, and landowners that have contacted us initially. Whether Lockheed would qualify or not, I don't know, but that may be a potential for them. They may be able to qualify.
That property in Goodyear?
Their current site is not.
The current site is not in Goodyear.
Right, the buildings are in a county island, but they do have land that would be within our city limits of where we could do that. I think back to your point.
And they already have restrictions anyway placed on buying foreign goods or bringing.
Right, I mean, they've got Buy America.
They already have the issues that they have to deal with.
Right, but Councilmember Osborne, they're also in a military reuse zone that provides similar benefits, so that is an added plus, even within the county.
So even if they didn't want to bring a foreign manufacturer into,
And very
they
popular
already
today.
qualify. Is that what you're saying? They already qualify even if you
Right.
don't want to bring, okay.
Everybody's Osborne.
We called her Osborne. That's what we Yeah, that's okay.
It's
And
okay.
she's not even blonde. She's not even brunette, so.
All right.
I
Any other
apologize.
questions?
A briefing, though. That was really.
Good, it was very
Thank you very
good.
much, Ernie.
That's the last subject. Adjourn this. How much, why don't we go for quarter after on that clock? Is that all right?
Okay.
Okay, that's 7 minutes. This work session is adjourned.